So today our topic is cost optimization for procurement. So we're looking at savings as we all start returning to work, and where we can make these opportunities, maximize these opportunities. And today's seminar is kindly sponsored by Amazon Business. So we're delighted to have Amazon Business on board with us today. They've been a massive supporter of SIP, so thanks again. And this is our second seminar in a series of 3. We'll have more details at the end about where you can get the next one, and also details of where you can find our first one, so you can sit and watch that when we recorded it. So without further ado, I'd like to invite our speaker today. That's Max Hampshire, who's Commercial Business Advisor at Amazon Business. So welcome, Max. Thanks for joining us today.
Yeah, afternoon. Thanks for having me, Emma.
No, you're more than
Good to
welcome.
be
It's
here.
great to see you. So, Max, tell me a little bit about you and your role at Amazon Business.
Yeah, so as you said, I'm a commercial customer advisor here for Amazon Business. Essentially, what that means is I specialize in tail spend procurement and sort of indirect spend, working with customers to really understand how they're purchasing and procurement challenges and objectives, really digging into the processes, reporting, reconciliation, and understanding where there's an opportunity to improve it, essentially. I started my role quite differently as an engineer. And then after battling with those processes, I moved into a startup and specialize in construction, procurement, and digitizing there before moving here. And that's pretty much it. I think that first part is about understanding customer challenges, and the next is I also help design and build the solution, obviously with Amazon Business around automating those processes or streamlining, and helping making sure everything ties together quite nicely. But
Sounds
yeah.
like a very varied role, and what a varied background you've had too.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's good fun.
So many people are preparing for returning to the office. I know we at SIPS are starting that transition, and people will be at different stages of that according to where they are in the world. But I guess everyone is starting to think about that transition back into the office, whether that's full time or hybrid from home, etc. What considerations and opportunities should procurement teams be looking out for this return to the office?
Yeah, it's a good question. As you can imagine, it's something across the last year and a half I've been working pretty much non-stop on. I think COVID has obviously been a massive catalyst for changing how people work.
Yeah.
Um, Procurement teams have had to move quite fast in terms of ensuring staff can work from home effectively. We've had disrupted supply chains, new categories consider in terms of PPE and things like that, ergonomic equipment. But I think now where I think the latest stat I saw on it was, you know, more than 40% of organizations still have no plan to return to the office. A lot similar to yourself are adopting that hybrid model. So I think the challenge now is actually about building those robust processes, um, strong enough to support staff working effectively wherever they are in the office, at home, while still balancing that with cost savings and being able to generate that across the board. So I think with that in mind, the main consideration for me is around this total cost of ownership. So especially in the small ticket and indirect spend where I can specialize, taking that holistic view of the spend and the cost is going to be much more effective in driving cost savings. So if you've got um, an item that's slightly cheaper on face value, but it takes 3 days to get there, or you're contracted for more than you need, you're paying expedited shipping, etc. But the money you've saved on that initial purchase is going to be lost tenfold in administrations and delays, double handling costs if you're sending out to your staff working remotely, and that's before even diving into sort of reconciliation. So I think taking a wider consideration of that total cost of ownership and that whole view of how much that's actually cost you in terms of time and energy as well. And then with that in mind, then the next thing is, right, what can I do to reduce that overall cost? And it's a strategy that I work with a lot of my customers on called cost optimization. So shifting the attention from just driving siloed cost savings, taking that view, and then evaluating the full cost of it, of logistics management reconciliation, and bringing that in to do short-term savings, obviously, but also medium and long-term savings for the organization. I think that's key from a cost savings perspective, and hopefully the processes that you design in that will make it very, very simple to get stuff to your staff where they need it.
Excellent. So when it comes to cost optimization, what strategies could people deploy to maximize these opportunities?
It's a good question. There's obviously quite a few solutions out there, and a lot of different strategies and options people can try. With my customers, I tend to break them into 3 buckets. So breaking that short term, the medium term, and the long term growth. So each bucket is obviously a bit more involved than the last, but typically more impactful. So you can see on the screen there, you've got firstly is operating better, secondly, reconfiguring those processes, and then thirdly, transforming capabilities. So a bit of a high level in terms of how you guys can deploy this strategy, and how it can help with those opportunities. I think operating better is really about driving those short-term growth. So traditionally, as I said, that would be reducing those upfront costs through negotiation, shifting spend toward contracted spend with some level of discounts. But there's a lot of other initiatives, I think, that are less used. And I think procurement leaders can aim to eliminate waste and improve efficiency by, driving and monitoring things like compliance. There's no point negotiating these prices if the second that contract's in place, or you've got that someone goes on a corporate card to an alternative supplier because they needed it next day or whenever it was. So I think procurement leaders taking that consideration and creating the path of least resistance for staff to get what they need, especially if they're working from home and working flexibly. They may not feel comfortable coming into the office, or it may be more hassle than it's worth, or you're taking time out of their working day. How can we create a system where they have what they need, but they're also buying it at the right price and the right, and it's not taking up all their time? And I think that one's quite critical, much more so now this year than it's ever been before. And with that one, I've set up a few, a ring fence storefront or restricted categories where staff can self-serve, add the items they need, request it goes through the approval. So you've got central purchasing can control those costs and the spend, which is obviously critical, but also the staff get what they need. So I think that's quite important one in terms of especially with the flexible working. Secondly is obviously keeping an eye on those extraordinary costs. So expedited shipping, as I mentioned, late payment terms, factoring these into profit and loss forecasts, and making sure that you're removing that non-value added spend consistently. I think that one in the last year and a half working through with customers has been quite a bit of a shock, where obviously the suppliers were adapting to new ways of working, and it was quite challenged. And I think that's been quite important this year. And then finally, quite a nice short-term sort of way to operate better is transparent pricing between suppliers. As with all things, it just normally means you can get a better price or service as suppliers compete for what is there. That's obviously quite easy on a marketplace model, but it is also achievable with other suppliers and outside of that space as well. So that tends to be where I bucket that short-term ways we can optimize costs, but also still support staff, getting what they need and working effectively. The second side, which is a bit more in depth, is this reconfiguring the processes and networks. And as organizations look deeper into where there's opportunities to create cost savings within the purchasing processes themselves, one that's been massive this year is obviously supply consolidation, and I've seen this have a massive impact in firstly removing administration on, you know, onboarding suppliers, managing suppliers,
Mm.
and all of that side of things, but also combining your spend to take advantages of those economies of scale. And I think if people are working less centrally, that could be quite a challenge. So building those relationships now is going to be quite critical. And then within that, the second one is obviously with that extra time, hopefully, and the extra energy and potentially better relationships with those suppliers, actually digging into category management. So having cross-functional teams build specific strategies for each categories is going to help really with the medium and long-term growth. So certain categories won't need potentially to be supporting staff working from home. That's going to need a different solution to a category where your team are purchasing. You know, someone might need a mouse in their house. Forgive the rhyme. Then, you know, that's going to require a different strategy to a large direct purchase. And I think diverging and splitting out those categories is going to be really critical in the medium term. And then finally, the third bucket, which for me is definitely the favorite, is around sort of transforming your capabilities. You know, fundamentally, I think this is the most effective tool in where you can optimize your costs across the organization. And really that's about deploying digital strategies that can massively remove whole chunks of administration and manual routine processes from your internal processes, and hopefully help facilitate additional you know, capabilities that you can deliver to customers to improve your service as well. um, so typically, you know, obviously automating and digitizing purchasing solutions for me tends to be the focus, where you can build the team that are purchasing really effectively. And there's a lot of softwares and companies, including us, that do this. But you know, it removes the administration from your team buying. It removes the administration assigning and reconciling that spend. You can have the approval workflows in there digitized, and then at the end you get, you know, really clean insights on the data. You've got a
Mm.
streamlined process which people can't really go around, which isn't taking you hours and hours to fill up. And also what we're seeing is it drives that operational effectiveness as well. And I think an example I shared on that sort of self-service, where people can go on, find what they need. What we're seeing is, you know, we're saving around 18 hours per employee a
Mm.
year, just being able to find what they need and request it without losing any of that control. And then on the end, you've got the granular detail of who's purchasing, what cost center, you know, what PO number, everything you'd need to reconcile that. So for me, this one's the key, really powerful. And then that, you know, that's quite a simple example. Things like integrating with your ERP systems and finance systems as well, it just allows your staff to execute the work faster. You can send the items across the nation or across the globe, really, um, much more effectively, and you can focus on those value added tasks, hopefully with the time you saved. Um, so I think that they're sort of
Yeah.
the three initiatives for me.
And no, and I kind of take from that, you know, the need for flexibility and not having just a one size fits all approach. And I guess that's, you know, whether it's by category, like you say, or because people are working from home or against in the office, or like you said, working with different suppliers on different solutions. So it's something that can flex and be agile. And I guess technology really has a leading role in making some of these efficiencies really come to fruition.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think especially for those sort of latter two buckets, it's going to be essential. And what we're seeing is, you know, those opportunities and savings in digitization. Um, you know, they're amazing, and potentially, you know, if you streamline that end-to-end process, so from purchase to payment, really, um, you know, the results are insane. If you look on the graph there, you can see, you've got 50% more increased visibility of your spend.
Mm.
The execution speeds have increased by 47%. So your staff are getting what you need much, much quicker, and you're delivering a 21% saving rate. So your staff are getting what they need quicker. They're getting what they need to work optimally, but you're also still saving money and reducing that admin. And I think they're much, much more scalable, these solutions. If you're expanding, if you're shrinking, if you're adapting to working from home, the technology can shift much faster than humans ever could. So it creates much like a really essential opportunity, I think, for organizations. So yeah, I'd say these technology is critical. The results it brings in is obviously massively powerful. And I think the other thing worth noting is, some of these solutions aren't that expensive either. I know a lot of suppliers and organizations do what we do, but I'm not familiar at all with their costs at the moment. But I know on Amazon Business we can do this for almost little to no cost, and I'm sure there's other suppliers that can do the same. But adding these technologies, really, really is, I think, for me, critical in adapting to working from home.
Brilliant. Thanks, Max. That was really interesting. Now, for the second part of this seminar, I'm going to hand over to Max, and we've got a case study. So Max is going to introduce our case study now and go through a little bit more detail. And then I will come back on the end and manage any questions that everyone's got. So as I said previously, get your questions in nice and early in the Q&A box. So Max, I'm going to hand over to you now, and I'll be back later to take some questions.
Yep, thank you. Cheers. Yeah, absolutely. So I think one thing I'm conscious of is I don't want to just sort of talk away on some of the theory. So I'm really happy to introduce a customer that I've worked quite closely on this journey with, helping consolidate and optimize that spend, partnering with Amazon Business. So I'll hand over to Sandeep from the ICL group, and pleasure to have you here.
Thank you, Max. So first of all, thank you for being part of this and making me part of this. It's a pleasure. And to introduce myself, I'm Sandeep Singh, and I've been working with ICL Group in our European headquarters based out of Amsterdam. And as you can see, I'm in the office today. As a global sourcing manager, I've been working here. From an experience perspective, I come across with a cross-cultural experience working in India, in Middle East, in Europe for more than 12 years, primarily in procurement, operations, and strategy. And why I'm here, because me, along with my colleague Nazira Kasim, have been driving some of the digital procurement initiatives within ICL Group, which includes Amazon Business implementation as well. So in next few minutes, what I'll try and do is I'll try and walk you through our decision parameters, decision journey, and then what we were able to come out of it as an outcome, and what are some of the learnings that we had. So before I do that, it's important that I give you a bit of context into who we are from an ICL's perspective, because it will be more relatable to you in terms of, okay, how the big or small organization is. So therefore, allow me to give a quick snapshot into our company. ICL, or Israel Chemical Limited, is a leading global specialty minerals company, and we create impactful solutions for humanity's sustainable challenges in global food, agriculture, and industrial markets. In terms of spread, we employ close to around 12,000 employees worldwide and operate across approximately 48 plants in 13 countries worldwide. So as a part of our continuous improvement program to drive commercial and service excellence, because that's been our core target year on year, our Global Procurement Organization, or GPO as we call it, has been evaluating possible solutions to manage tail spend for our operating sites and sales offices. And this is something that I would talk about further as well as we go along. So talking about this specific initiative, our focus here was to drive efficiency in tail spend management without compromising on controls. And I guess most of you will relate with this kind of a balancing act that we at procurement try and do, because this is one of the most critical balancing act, that you achieve efficiency but at the same time do not let go of the controls. uh, and therefore the idea here was very simple: to understand the needs, what we need to do to drive the tail spend management efficiencies, at the same time try and provide a solution to address it. Thus, to achieve it, we started by doing the usual as we do, analyzing the spend data, and thereafter trying to fit through tools and solutions which will be fit for purpose, which included things like uh, automation of purchase orders, punch out implementation, uh, as at, and more specific to this discussion, create like partnering or having on board a digital buying environment, or simply put, a marketplace solution. So, taking forward my last point, as I talked about that, it was more simply a digital buying environment. So, what we started doing was we started doing due diligence and evaluations to understand what can be more fit for our purpose. Because, as Max said, that there are there is Amazon, and at the same time there are some other suppliers as well, where the cost and the efficiencies can be good, can be comparable as well. So that's how we started post our due diligence and evaluation. We partnered with Amazon Business. And the idea was to deliver a fit for purpose and a seamless digital buying environment, or the experience, as we say. Uh, as I mentioned earlier, we were focused on having a tool to drive efficiency without compromising on tools, on controls. And I'll keep on harping on that parameter, because that was a really critical kind of a guiding principle behind everything that we were doing. And very interestingly, Amazon Business delivered this for us. Benefits that we received was we had access to larger supplier base, something that Tailspin usually lacks. When it comes to a strategic or the big buying, we do spend a lot of time and energy to have access to a larger supply market. But when it comes to Tailspin, that's something that we usually as companies lack. So that's a big plus for us. Turnaround time has been really quick. Obviously, Amazon Business being Amazon, so the turnaround time is much better compared to any other player in the market. And because of the design of the system, we had a lesser manual intervention. With this, also what comes came for us, and which we realize is a very important part, is a very useful spend tracking mechanism, so that we know at the click of a button how much we are spending, what we are spending on, and who is doing it. If we have a spread as big as ours. So while we have not implemented Amazon Business yet on the entire 48 sites, as we said, we have implemented these on significant number of sites which are within Europe, and specifically in UK as well. And another important point that we got here was that a very easy to implement workflow for approvals. And that was again a very critical point. So this has been a great journey so far. So what actually came to us? What was the kind of benefits or outcomes that we can talk about? So Amazon Business helped us deliver a fit for purpose tool to manage the tail spend with a much simplified process, and thereby creating capacity to generate value further up the strategic ladder, which means that if I'm able to free up our resources from the tail spend management, we are able to, like, I was able to focus on things which are more critical in terms of the strategic ladder. It also helps us reduce transaction cost. Ballpark, again, this can be very different in terms of the way organizations are structured. But ballpark, I would say that on the transaction cost perspective, from origination to payment, if I just try and benchmark that, where we were able to reduce that by a significant number, close to around 50 to 60% on a per transaction basis. That was a really good thing that we were able to showcase in terms of the commercial benefit. Additionally, it also helped us reduce the approval flows. Again, something that we always want to do in terms of reducing bureaucracy, and at the same time empower our internal stakeholders. But at the same time, I would say that uh, this is something that was not as easy as downloading the app, very honestly, because when we think of Amazon Business, we may think of it as a tool which will be easy to implement. Yes, indeed it is, but it's also important to align internal business processes with the setup that you do with Amazon Business, and that actually is a very critical success parameter. So what else I would talk about some of the success factors and which is important for all of us in the businesses to do while implementing any such tool here is like creating the internal processes for this first and then setting up the business account, Amazon business account, which is in alignment with that. I will re-emphasize on this part because that's the beauty of this tool, Amazon Business's buying tool, that we can configure it. We can put in as many approvals if we want to. We can put a value limit to it. We can put a number of staggered approval processes. So we can do all of these. We can block certain categories if we don't want. So all of these can be done, and this actually can be very much aligned with the internal processes if you want to do that. Early engagement with stakeholders, I guess this is true for this or any other initiative, and that was critical here as well. So, with all our stakeholders like finance, accounts payable, to ensure that all stakeholders understood what it takes to make it a success and seamlessly deliver what is expected from them. And the most important part is obviously the communication bit, because we needed a consistent communication across everybody, stakeholders who were directly or indirectly involved internally. Uh, but that, I guess, is key to any initiative, and this wasn't an exception. So yeah, so in terms of next steps, in within this initiative, I would say that we are consistently striving to increase adoption. How we are doing it, primarily we are trying to go both by adding more sites, which increases the breadth of the implementation, at the same time going deep into each site, which means that trying to add a spend within each site, trying to add more categories. So that's something that we are trying to do. We are also looking to go deeper with already implemented categories and products as well. Uh, Another important part is we are trying to look if we can implement ERP integration, whether you have SAP or any other, trying to integrate that with Amazon Business, because once we are able to do that, that will open door to the inventorized item, as we call within our ICL group, under the Amazon Business spend. So that would be, I guess, a key milestone as well for us. So yeah, I would, if I just try and sum up everything, I would say this has been our experience implementing Amazon Business. A worthwhile journey, I would say. We had lots of learning and we have gained a lot as well. And so far, it has been a happy and efficient story, if I can say that. And I'll be more than happy to hear your questions, your any queries that you have on this implementation for me.
Thanks for sharing. Part of the great thing is that you get to work with me, which is obviously fantastic. But it's also a really fantastic example of where procurement can drive productivity. Obviously the key for ICL was about control, but also enabling you to operate and move faster whilst bringing down that total cost of ownership. So it's obviously been great working with you. And I think moving forward, Sandeep's really bridged the gap between how we can use these sort of buckets and considerations in terms of driving cost optimization and linking that to actual business benefits. So being able to move more agile, driving cost savings, and that what you can do with that visibility in terms of short-term and long-term growth. And I think there's certainly a lot we can help with in terms of digging into the detail and understanding where we can improve savings, streamlining processes, or integrating and redefining processes as well. So appreciate you sharing, Sandeep. So in summary, as I said, there's obviously quite a few different ways that organizations can do this. We're obviously very biased in that Amazon Business we think is a really, really great low cost highly effective solution for driving these working from home solutions, supporting staff flexible working, or even just managing that tail spend much more efficiently. Um, there's customer advisors similar to me that are much more than happy to answer questions and industry specific questions as well. But you can find out more at the link on the spreadsheet as well, on the PowerPoint, sorry. Yeah, that's it from me. Thanks for listening. Over to you, Emma.
Brilliant. Thanks, Max. Thanks, Sandeep. That was brilliant and great to see how it's working in action. So really great to have that case study. We've got a few questions coming through. So anybody else who's listening, if you've got some questions ready, then start popping them in as soon as you can. Someone wants to know the case study that's we've put forward today. How applicable would it be for organisations who have centralised or decentralised procurement teams, or even a hybrid? Or would it only really be suitable for centralised procurement functions?
Yeah, no, it's a good question. No, we work with all different types of procurement teams, centralized department heads, etc. So the tools within the account are very versatile. Obviously, what works for ICL may not work for you, but we would work through that and build those processes to support there. So in short, all of them.
Okay. And another question is a bit more about what kind of things that you can buy through Amazon business. Is it mostly indirect spend, and if you could give a bit more information, Max, about how you select and vet suppliers. Is it even possible to run tenders through the Amazon platform?
Yeah, absolutely. So my specialty tends to be in the indirect and tail spend. That's where someone has to do it, and I quite enjoy it, so why not? But Amazon Business, we, like all suppliers, we are available for all different types of purchasing. We operate with a number of different frameworks within certain regions and certain sectors as well. So in short, it doesn't have to be indirect spend. We have large category spenders or even direct purchasers as well. I think the question's just disappeared, but in terms of the suppliers, I don't know the full details on the supplier vetting process. I do have some documentation I can provide, but it's fairly robust. And obviously, at the point of purchase, one of the benefits of a marketplace model is you can check those certifications and make sure the items you're buying is approved for whatever it needs to be.
Excellent.
Sorry, I lost the question if I didn't answer it all. But
I got the last bit of that question was whether you can run tenders through the system.
Yeah, it's not an area I'm involved with. Amazon Business have been involved with organizations helping tender. Overall, I'd say typically we are a marketplace model, so a bit more self-service. So I'd say high level, that's probably it, unless it's a very large purchase.
No problem. Sandeep, you talked a bit in your case study about the engagement with stakeholders, really, and getting people on board on that journey. And I guess that's something that you shouldn't really underestimate when you're undertaking a project like this. What kind of percentage of time for the overall project was done in that planning stage and getting people on board with it?
Thank you, Mo, for that. And I would say significant time, part of the time, because I would say primarily when I talk about time spent early on, it was primarily across stakeholder engagement, and second, configuring Amazon Business to our internal processes. The later part, which is more to do with configuring Amazon Business, was still easier because I would try and bother Max about it. So say, hey, this is something that I'm trying to do, because each organization has their own set of concerns or the processes that we want. But that's something that we found it was much easier with Amazon, that, hey, can we address this? Can we address it? We were able to do that. But obviously, when it comes to stakeholder engagement, also from our part of the procurement world, it was important that everybody, right from accounts payable do the vendor registration. Everybody was aligned so that we don't miss a payment cycle. We don't have any issues from audit perspective. So it was critical that we manage everybody together. So a significant part, I would say. But once that was set, it was much smoother and easier.
Yeah, I mean, because some of these product items, I guess, are fairly emotive purchases for individuals. You know, we all want a chair that feels comfortable, or the right type of mouse, etc. So I guess it's getting people on board and getting them to buy into it, and it's balancing that compliance with giving people enough choice. And I guess that's something that you have to consider when you're mapping out exactly what options you're going to give.
Yeah, and if I may, I would add one more point to that. Is like when you hear organizations talk about giving such options to all employees, you would start. They might get a bit jittery. Hey, is that paper gold-plated paper or just a normal paper? Oh, but that's the beauty that we have here. That we can actually control at the back end. We can implement such controls in place. So I guess Max has been helping me do that in Amazon UK account specifically as well.
Excellent. Got a bit of a follow-up question on that one that's come through. Max, can you share more about the controls that can be put in place to stop maverick spend? So more about those procedures and controls that force people into a bit more of a compliance.
Yeah, absolutely. And obviously there's quite a few different ways people see maverick spend, be it corporate cards, etc. I think for me, the first thing is about getting visibility. So, adding the team into the account such that you can see the spend, you can pull those reports very, very quickly, be it categories. And then moving on from once you can see that, the controls, as Sandeep have mentioned a few, we can build in, approval workflows. So, spend in specific categories need to be approved by that budget holder or need to be approved by line manager. So, very simple click approvals that can be from any spend to spend over a certain value or in a certain category. But also, as Sandeep said, then there's things like building out catalogs and list of items where, if it's about, you know, driving that compliance, making sure people are buying those preferred products, making sure that they are either just show up at the top of the screen or they're the only thing that shows up. So there's a lot of different controls we can be in there. And I think once you can see what sort of maverick spend we're talking about or what the rogue spend is, then we can, there's any number of combinations, even monthly budgets across departments and teams as well can be added. So it's quite a lot we can do there.
I guess it's also another balance really on trying to understand the motivations with people trying to circumvent what you're putting in place, and that's an opportunity to get some kind of feedback loop to make sure what you're putting in place kind of makes sense for users. I think that's probably one of the biggest reasons why people break a rule. They either didn't understand the rules in the first place, and that's down to the communication, Sandeep, like you said, or the comms plan, or perhaps it's too difficult to do it that way and there's a much easier way to do it. So yeah. It's about balancing, I would have thought. Sandeep, you mentioned some other spend areas, etc. You're looking to kind of expand this on. And Max, I wondered if there are any further developments or things in the pipeline that you could indeed share. As someone mentioned, if there's a kind of a roadmap of what's next in terms of technology solutions. Is there anything that you could share with us at this point?
Yeah, I'm not sure exactly what I'm allowed to share, but I think at a high level, we're certainly working towards things like e-invoicing, full integrations with ERP finance. So, taking that full pay to purchase, purchase to pay process and getting the whole thing admin free. We can do it with some suppliers already. And I think part of that is about scaling that up and building in e-invoicing. So, almost everything's done for you. I'd say that's probably the most relevant progress we're making currently, but I'm happy to share a bit more information on that as well.
Okay, great. And if someone was looking to start implementing this, what advice would you give them? Would it be to start off small? What easy, quick wins? Where could they make a start?
Yeah, Sandeep, you may be able to help with this more at the start. Um, I would recommend, as Sandeep said, identify, you know, where the inefficiencies are,
Mm,
and then start to look at. Often, I think starting small potentially has less of an impact overall, and can sink a bit more results in. And I think identifying what the processes are and what it does look like, and then looking at what it could look like, and then jumping straight in. That would be but that's what I do with everything. So, Sandeep, you may conflict on that one.
Yeah, so kind of building on what Max said. So I have this experience of implementing Amazon in different countries within Europe. So Max's counterpart in Germany, France as well, in UK as well. So I'll just walk you through the decisions that we did. So although being the same company, the number of the implementation that we have in these different geographies are a bit different as well. So that brings back to the point to say, hey, understand what is really bothering you in terms of the problems that you have at site, and then try and address with the tools that Amazon Business tool has rather. So and then make it more customizable. So that's how the easy part is. For example, in UK, I have access to almost entire site. But if in Germany, I have access to limited people. But the way we have done it is like go ahead, test the water, and then within very quickly, because if you just let it be there, it will just remain there. So just expand it, take a exponential curve thereafter, and implement it on a significant level. But yeah, first testing the water to understand how the field is like.
great.
That's been my experience, I would say.
And what about any lessons learned? What about any painful experiences or things that didn't go quite right that you would think about doing differently next time? Is there anything that you've learned from this experience that you would change?
Max knows almost all about those.
Yeah,
Well, it's
No.
part of the process, isn't it? I mean, nothing's expected to run
No,
100%
no, no,
smoothly.
no, obviously not. So that jokes apart, I would say this has been a very fairly decent experience, I would say. And each day as we do, that's the beauty of operating with so many people around. So every day or like almost on a every week basis, we receive questions to say, hey, can we do this within Amazon Business? Can we do that? So that's a learning phase for us as well. And then I try and pass this out to Max. So there are things that are happening. So I know that tomorrow again, me and Max are talking about one more thing that is coming up. So and how Amazon can address that. So I would say primarily that's how it's a learning process that's going on. So I don't see any bigger challenge or side that we have encountered.
That's great. Great to hear that, and that keeping that communication going throughout the
Oh, yeah.
process and tweaking things and tackling them as they come along. Great
can't,
stuff. Great.
can't get rid of him.
Oh, that's good to hear. We haven't got any more questions through. There was just one last question that was going to lead to the end because there was a question on the model really here that we're talking about is on the tool. Is it a subscription or enterprise model? Somebody has asked, but I'm sure if anyone wants to get in touch to find out more about the costs or how to get involved, then we can get in. We'll have the contact details at the end. So I don't have to put you on the spot there, Max, to answer that one. Don't want to.
I'm happy to do a quick run through. I think overall, I'd say that the cost model is very much like Amazon. So the Amazon business is of no cost to the customer. Um, and very much like Amazon, the only cost is an optional cost which comes with Business Prime. So the next day shipping, and we've got some additional tools that are available on Business Prime as well. That tends to be the model. So I suppose I hope that answers. I don't know
Yeah,
whether
no
that
problem.
complies with
And the
subscription or
no, that's fine. And the shipping, I guess that are there minimum order values? That's another question that came up to ensure free shipping.
No, if you're on Prime, obviously very similar to Amazon. I think 90% of our catalog is free shipping.
Yeah.
If not, it tends to be, I think if it's over or under £30, it's all free anyway. But no, and when we started, we specialized in small items, and it was about what the customer needs. As we're building up, we've kept that mentality. So shipping costs fairly limited, and 0 if you've got Prime.
Excellent. Great. Max, Sandeep, thank you very much indeed for joining us today. And thank you to everyone for submitting those questions. That was really interesting. So thank you for joining us.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone.
Cheers.
So that draws our seminar to a close for today. But as I mentioned earlier, we've recorded this session, so you can watch it back again or share with your team. So we'll send the information through on those links and where you will get that from. Thank you again for Amazon Business for sponsoring these seminars. As I mentioned, this is the second one in a series. And if you go to the link that's just been put into the chat, you can make sure that you sign up to our next one, which is on the 9th of November. Yes, and that's it. And also you can find out how you can get in touch with the one that you perhaps missed, where we did one on AI and data. So we can send you information for that. So all that remains is to thank you very much for listening in today. And we look forward to seeing you again soon.